Green plants obtain carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis from the atmosphere or air. Carbon dioxide is mostly obtained from the atmosphere or air. It enters the leaves through the stomata found on the underside of leaves. If plants are unable to carry out photosynthesis, they will no longer be able to produce oxygen. The oxygen that plants replenish in the atmosphere will be lost. Eventually, this will cause most animals and plants to die out as they only respire, and oxygen in the atmosphere will slowly be used up. Once the atmosphere has no more oxygen, all living organisms will eventually die and become extinct. In plant cells, chloroplasts enable plant cells to produce their own food. Chloroplasts in plant cells trap light energy from the sun to enable plants to carry out photosynthesis. In plants, photosynthesis occurs mainly in the leaves. However, photosynthesis can also occur in other parts of the plant, such as the stems. Grass does not grow as quickly during winter as it does during spring because grass becomes dormant in winter. Water, sunlight, and temperature directly affects the rate at which plants carry out photosynthesis. Carrot is a root, onion is an underground stem, and potato is an underground stem. The plant can still make food its own food because the green stems can still carry out photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide can be obtained from respiration in cells. Hence, it will have food to respire and thus be able to grow. In a short time, it will be able to grow new leaves and have no problem carrying out photosynthesis. The tree and algae contain chlorophyll needed to carry out photosynthesis. The mushroom has no chlorophyll to carry out photosynthesis. The dried leaf has no water and is most likely dead, and so it cannot photosynthesize. During the day, the plant was able to carry out photosynthesis, so the volume of oxygen should increase. During the night, the plant only respires, so the volume of oxygen would decrease. Since photosynthesis exceeds respiration during the day, the plant produces more oxygen during the day than it uses up oxygen at night. So, the graph should be steeper in the day and gentler at night. Before baking soda is added, there is no carbon dioxide available for the plant to carry out photosynthesis, as there are no dissolved gases in boiled water, so no oxygen bubbles are formed. After adding baking soda, the plant forms bubbles because it had carried out photosynthesis. This implies that carbon dioxide now exists. So, baking soda must be used to provide carbon dioxide. The croton plant, which has leaves that can come in multiple colors, such as green, white, purple, orange, yellow, red or pink, is able to carry out photosynthesis. The croton plant contains chlorophyll hidden under the non-green colors to enable the plant to carry out photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is important to plants as it allows plants to convert light energy from the sun into chemical, potential energy stored in sugar. Sugar is used to release energy during respiration for plant cells to carry out life processes so that plants can survive. Tom is trying to investigate how water affects the rate at which plants carry out photosynthesis. The experiment is not fair because setup B is exposed to more light than setup A, as it is nearer to the window. Amount of light should not be a variable. To improve the experiment, put both plants at the same distance away from the window. Iodine solution, turn dark blue, as leaf contains starch. Iodine solution did not turn dark blue, as leaf B does not contain starch. Jane could have covered leaf B with black. Any action that stops light from reaching the leaf or carbon dioxide from entering stomata. Alcohol in the test tubes became green after the leaves were boiled in it because alcohol damages plant cells and removes the green coloration, chloroplasts, in leaves. If the lamp becomes brighter, the amount of gas increases. Small bubbles can be seen collecting at the top of the inverted test tube. When light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases, so oxygen gas is produced at a faster rate. After adding a layer of oil to the surface of the water, nothing will happen to the hydrolar plant. It is still alive as it can make food using light from the lamp. Fat, carbohydrates and protein give us energy. Vitamins and minerals do not give us energy, but are good for our body. The plant in jar B was exposed to the most amount of light. It was able to capture enough light energy to make food using carbon dioxide and water to produce oxygen and sugar. Since the aim of the experiment is to find out if plants need light to carry out photosynthesis, the variable to change is the presence or absence of light. Iodine solution, added to parts C and D, turn dark blue because they contain stored food, starch. The plant was kept in the sun and was able to make food. Eating plant parts C and D give us energy because the parts contain starch. Starch gives us energy. Plants capture light energy from the sun to make food, in the form of sugar, using carbon dioxide and water, through a process called photosynthesis. The purpose of setting up tank B is to test if animal makes its own food in the presence of sunlight. Tank B is placed near a window and does not contain any food. Since animal X in tanks A and C are active, it can be concluded that animal X gets its energy from the food it eats. Since animal ate only the green vegetables, corn and fruit, we can conclude that it eats only plants. Animal Y could not make its own food as it was an animal. It did not eat the food that it was given, so the most likely answer is that it had a specialized diet. Carbon dioxide and water are made into sugar and oxygen in the presence of light that is trapped by the chlorophyll present in the leaves. Chlorophyll also exists in other parts of a plant, and light can be trapped by these parts to carry out photosynthesis. Iodine solution turns dark blue when starch is present. Animals, for example, zebra, hippopotamus and goat, that eat plants get their energy directly from plants. To ensure a fair test in the experiment, 1. Use identical plants. 2. Place the plants at the same location. 3. Expose the plants to the same amount of light. 4. Give the same amount of water to both plants. To remove the starch from the leaves, she must place the plants in a dark place for a few days. In a dark place, the plants are unable to make food and will use up the starch stored in all parts of the plants. Jack should eat snack B to obtain the most energy. It has the highest fat, carbohydrates and protein content. Vitamins and minerals found in snack B are not sources of energy. Plants does not need to be fed to stay alive. Plants make their own food in the presence of light, carbon dioxide and water. Alice can put another potted plant beside the plant that is being fed and show that it is still healthy and alive without being fed. Alternatively, she can conduct the experiment in a dark room. Areas Q and S received light and were able to carry out photosynthesis. Thus, both areas tested positive for starch in the iodine solution, tuned dark blue. Areas P and R were covered by a thick piece of cardboard, so they did not receive light and were unable to make food. Thus, both areas tested negative for starch and the iodine solution remained yellowish-brown. The iodine solution would turn dark blue as flour contains starch. The squid paste did not contain starch. In the absence of starch, iodine solution will remain yellowish-brown. The iodine solution would turn dark blue as flour contains starch. Smaller animals are not always eaten by bigger animals. The choice of food does not depend on the size of an animal. All green plants can make their own food. Leaves that are partially green can make their own food. Starch would be present in area A and D because they are exposed to sunlight. Photosynthesis can occur. Area B and C is not exposed to sunlight and so starch would not be present. Without light, the plant is unable to carry out photosynthesis. The water plant can only respire and use up oxygen gas. The water snails will not be able to receive sufficient oxygen and die as a result. During the day, plants carry out photosynthesis to release oxygen while consuming carbon dioxide. No photosynthesis occurred as there is no light and or carbon dioxide present. Stomata are tiny openings found mostly on the underside of leaves. These openings allow for gaseous exchange. The size of the stomata of plant changes throughout the day. The size of the stomata increases to allow more carbon dioxide to enter the plant for photosynthesis. The gills of a fish have a large surface area so that more oxygen can be absorbed. Both plants and animals need energy to survive. Both plants and animals can store energy if there is excess. Only plants can make their own food. Only plants need the sun directly for photosynthesis. The rate of photosynthesis of the plant was slower. This was most likely caused by insufficient amount of carbon dioxide. Plant eaters do not get energy from the sun directly. Without light, the plant is unable to carry out photosynthesis. The water plant can only respire and use up oxygen gas. The water snails will not be able to receive sufficient oxygen and die as a result. Starch is absent in this too. Light is unable to reach these two for photosynthesis to occur. No food may be made at these two. A well-watered plant covered with black plastic bag will result in no access to sunlight. Only respiration occurred and thus oxygen is used while carbon dioxide is released. Iodine solution turns blue in the presence of starch. The covered areas of the leaf did not undergo photosynthesis, so no glucose, which is stored as starch, was made. Starch is only present in the uncovered parts A and D of the leaf. The snail would die first as it has no food, whereas the water plant could make its own food. As distance between the intensity of light increases, the amount of oxygen collected decreases. Leaf L is carrying out photosynthesis because its stomata are open to allow carbon dioxide to enter the leaf. The rate of photosynthesis increases when the amount of light and carbon dioxide increases. Algae can make food, so it is the first organism in the food chain. How is it possible for the leaf to trap sunlight to make food? The leaf has chlorophyll that enables it to trap sunlight. Water and food are transported by the transport system of a plant. The leaves of the plants along the roadside are often dusty. Explain how the rate of photosynthesis will be affected when a leaf is covered with dust. The dust of the leaf blocks some stomata and stops some sunlight from reaching the leaf. As a result, the rate of photosynthesis will decrease because the leaf takes in less carbon dioxide and receives less sunlight.
The crust of a pizza is made from flour and it contains starch, so the color of the iodine solution turns dark blue. The purpose of the test is to find out if plants need water to carry out photosynthesis. Thus, except for the presence or absence of water, all the other variables should remain constant. Joe wanted to find out if plants take in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. He included an equipment to measure the amount of carbon dioxide inside the glass box before and after the experiment. State 2 things Joe must do to ensure that the plant would carry out photosynthesis. He must ensure that there is sufficient light and water. Joe recorded the amount of carbon dioxide in the glass box before and after the experiment. What can Joe conclude from the experiment? Carbon dioxide is taken in by the plant when it carries out photosynthesis. The sun is very important to us as it keeps the earth warm for living things to survive and for green plants to carry out photosynthesis, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and producing oxygen for living things to survive. The 4 seasons are not a direct result of the sun. Oxygen is not required for plants to make food. Oxygen is one of the products of photosynthesis and is not required for photosynthesis to take place. Why are mushrooms not able to carry out photosynthesis? They do not have chlorophyll. Mushrooms do not contain chlorophyll to absorb sunlight for photosynthesis. Where does the energy needed for plants to carry out photosynthesis come from? Plants use light energy from the sun to carry out photosynthesis. Chloroplast enables the cell to make sugar, food, through photosynthesis, as it contains chlorophyll to absorb sunlight. A plant is covered with a bell jar and exposed to sunlight. How will the volume of carbon dioxide gas in the bell jar change over one cycle of the day and night? During the day, the volume of carbon dioxide decreases as photosynthesis exceeds respiration, so more carbon dioxide is used by the plant to carry out photosynthesis than given out when respiration takes place. During the night, the volume of carbon dioxide increases as the plant respires. Since the rate of photosynthesis exceeds the rate of respiration in the day, carbon dioxide gas decreases faster during the day than it increases at night. So, the graph must be steeper during the day and gentler during the night. Photosynthesis works best in blue and orange-red lights. Leaves appear green because the green portion of the light that strikes them is reflected. Objects appear a certain color because light of that certain color is reflected. So leaves appear green because they reflect the green color. In which of the following setups will the plant die the fastest? The plant will die the fastest in the setup with oil and boiled water, because boiled water has no oxygen for the plant to respire and carbon dioxide for the plant to carry out photosynthesis. The layer of oil also further prevents oxygen or carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from dissolving in the water. Gavin left a chili plant in a dark room for 1 day. After 1 day, he cut off a small portion of the stem, leaf, and chili fruit. He then smashed each of the 4 samples, stem, leaf, chili and seeds, and did an iodine test on each of them. State whether each of the 4 samples would turn blue-black after the iodine test. Iodine solution turned blue-black, leaf no, stem no, fruit yes, seeds yes. The leaf and stem do not contain starch, while the fruit and seed contain starch. When the plant is left in the dark, the plant starts to convert starch back into sugar for respiration, so the leaf and stem do not contain starch. However, the fruit and seed contain a huge store of starch that will not be used up within a day. Dick set up an experiment. Each setup was left alone for a few hours before the bell jar was lifted to check whether the candle was still burning. What can you conclude from the experiment about photosynthesis? Photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide and produces oxygen. If setup A did not have its bell jar lifted and was allowed to continue for a few more hours, would the candle still be burning? Explain your answer. Yes, the candle will still be burning, because photosynthesis in the plant provides the candle with oxygen to burn, and the candle provides the plant with carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis. The candles used in each setup were all initially of the same height and thickness. In which setup was the candle the longest at the end of the experiment? Explain your answer. Setup B. The candle in setup is still burning as the plant is giving out oxygen during photosynthesis, which is essential for the candle to burn. The candle in setup B will be extinguished before the candle in setup C, as the plant in setup B will respire and use up the oxygen that the candle needs to burn. So the candle in setup B extinguishes the fastest. Mabel placed some water plants inside an inverted funnel. She then immersed the inverted funnel and an inverted test tube into a beaker of water. She placed the beaker near a light source. After a while, she noticed some bubbles floating to the top of the inverted test tube, shown in the diagrams above. What do you think is the gas found in the bubbles? Oxygen. If Mabel changed the tap water to murky water, would she notice more or fewer bubbles floating to the top of the inverted test tube? Explain your answer clearly. Fewer bubbles would be produced if Mabel changed the tap water to murky water. Murky water allows less light to pass through to reach the plant at the bottom of the beaker. Thus, the rate of photosynthesis will be reduced, producing fewer oxygen bubbles. Kenny wanted to show that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. He enclosed 2 large leaves with 2 similar flasks. The plant was left under the sun for a few days. What was the purpose of soaking the cotton wool with lime water? The cotton wool, soaked in lime water, is to prevent the carbon dioxide from the air or atmosphere from entering the flask. Why is there a need to have 2 flasks in the experiment? The flask with water and dry cotton wool is to act as a control to show that the leaf needs carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis. Leanne wanted to find out if the amount of light affects the rate of photosynthesis. She set up an experiment in a dark room. Leanne placed the torch at a fixed distance from the beaker. After some time, bubbles started to appear. She counted the number of bubbles in the test tube per minute. She repeated the experiment by changing the number of torches used and kept the other variables constant. Based on the results, how does the amount of light affect the rate of photosynthesis? As the amount of light increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases. In another experiment, Leanne decided to use only 1 torch. Suggest how Leanne can change the amount of light in the experiment without using additional apparatus or changing the setup. Place the torch at a different distance away from the plant/beaker/test tube. A greenhouse provides a suitable environment for growing strawberries. To produce sweet strawberries, the plants must receive at least 8 hours of sunlight daily. Suggest how receiving at least 8 hours of sunlight daily may help in producing sweet strawberries. Plants would take in/trap/receive enough/sufficient light to carry out photosynthesis, 1/2 m, and produce sugar, 1/2 m. The door of the greenhouse is kept open most of the time. Suggest a reason for this. The door is kept open to ensure that carbon dioxide can enter the greenhouse and thus allowing the plants to receive a constant supply of carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Melissa conducted an experiment to find out how the temperature of water affected the rate of photosynthesis. She measured the amount of oxygen collected in the test tube and plotted the graph. What is the relationship between the temperature of water and the amount of oxygen collected? As temperature of water increases to X, the amount of oxygen increases. As temperature of water increases beyond/above X, the amount of oxygen decreases. How does keeping the number of water plants the same ensure a fair experiment? Keeping the number of plants the same ensures that they carry out photosynthesis at the same rate at each temperature. Or, when the amount of water plants are changed during each experiment, the amount of oxygen collected/rate of photosynthesis would differ.